talk about logistic and aviation management, an introduction on the components. The first module consists of components advantage, the growth of logistic in global organization, marketing channels, environmental inventory. I'll be covering few on the topics. Let us go step by step. First, we'll explain the components of logistic in details. What is international logistic? And explain marketing and logistic channels. Explaining the MRP, DRP, and JIT. What is inbound logistic and purchasing? The role of warehouse and the types of warehouses, the deregularization and the governmental rules. The logistic consists of following components: the customer service, which is required for the provide servicing and closely monitoring the customer's performance. Performance in the sense taking a feedback, analyzing it so that they can meet the market demand. Remember, any company, customer service plays a very important role, because once the customer is happy, your business keeps on going and the company will be in a profit. Next is the inventory management. Inventory is nothing but the goods which are required for the manufacturing process. The role of transportation, movement of goods, procurement of raw materials, then having a supply chain management, choosing a modal transportation system plays an important role. Storage and material handling. Materials have to be handled without damage and handled in a better way by using authorized or an approved equipment. The packaging plays important role, yes, to avoid spillages, the handling, the identification. The standard packings are there in the industry. The information process is basically knowing to a computer based or an IT embeddable system helps. Next is the demand forecast. Demanding forecast coming to predicting the requirement of the future requirement of a company. Next is the production planning. Planning your production. How do you want to produce? What are the components? How many units you want to manufacture? Those all things. Purchasing. It's a procurement department. It's a very important role. Facility location and other activities. Coming to the logistics system, it consists of inventory management, as I was talking in the previous slide, the transportation, storage handling, packaging, information process. They might be using one of the ERP concept. Demand forecasting is nothing but the requirement of the future. The purchasing of the raw materials has to be taken. Facility location, production planning, other activities, and customer service. The objective of a specific organization could include tasks such as after-sale parts, service supports, the maintenance requirement, returning of certain goods, and recycling operations. Any organization unlikely requires all these specific tasks. Accomplish example, a service firm has an airline might combine elements for the formation, process, maintenance, demand forecasting, customer service, and purchasing function into a logistic system designed to reach its customers. On the other hand, a manufacturer is consumer goods may draw from transportation, inventory, the management, storage, material handling, packaging, and all. That's how it talks about the concepts. Let us understand what is an international logistic. Simple definition. International logistic is a management process of planning, implementing, and controlling the physical and information flow concerned with the material and final goods from the point of origin to the point of usage across at least one international border. It has to cross the country. Then only we specify that as an international logistic. In other terms, you can take an example, that is something we call it as exports. Item coming inside the country is import. A item goes out of the country is called to be as export. So explaining the marketing channels. The logistic channel marketing deals with physical and administrative procedures related to purchasing, handling, storage, like I have earlier spoken about the equipments and all. To succeed in a market, a company needs to understand how marketing channels may be improved and streamlined, and how the products can reach the customers efficiently. It becomes more and more important for the player in the marketing channel to carry out their task in such a way that the customer receives high degree of service. End of the day, because customer is running your business, remember. Logical process relate to many traditional functions with the company and compromises suppliers as well as the customers and the discipline of logistic to develop and focus on reducing areas of considering and the overall picture through integration in the company and the cooperation in this of the supplier and the customer. The subjects of logistic and marketing are closely related, and the course for you all, it looks something like a channel, like the point of view on the both discipline. The logistic parts of the code describe the physical flow of the items and the goods, and the marketing part shows the encouraging the demand. Coming to the other topic, the marketing and logistic channels. Logistic and marketing channel deals with the physical and administrative process related to purchasing, handling, storage, transportation, and delivery of manufacturing goods, of raw materials and equipments, and discuss how goods and services are made available to the end user. To succeed in a market, a company needs to understand how marketing channels may be improved and streamlined, how the products can reach the customers efficiently. It is becoming more and more important for the player in the market channel to carry out the task in such a way the customer receives the right degree of services. A typical picture you can see here, the brand owner, he has a distribution of various sectors of the city area. Take an example of a Bangalore. From a central warehouse system, they have various hubs. From the various hubs, again it goes to the retail outlets of various stores so that it can be sold on retail so that the customer picks up. A typical example, the inputs are your orders and your forecast. And next comes your master production schedule, your BOM, and the inventory. Works out to a concept known as MIP. By knowing what is the orders from the company you have and what you are predicting to produce and the inventory required, those type of inputs required for a material requirement planning, that is for the factory or a company, gives an output, that is your purchase order, your material planning and the work orders and the reports. Coming to the material requirement planning is a computer-based inventory management designed to improve production or a productivity of business. Company uses material requirement planning system to estimate quantities of raw material and schedule their deliveries. So in other term, MRP is also designed to be answer a question like what indeed, how much indeed needed, and what is it needed. So material requirement planning is a production planning schedule and inventory control system used to manage manufacturing process. Material requirement planning is a technique for determining the quality, the quantity and timing for the acquisition of dependent demand items needed to satisfy master schedule requirements. Material planning is also a technique which converts master production schedules to end products into detailed schedule for raw materials and part used in those end products. In some terms, it is also called as MPS. The plan and the company has developed for production of inventory and staffing, etc. MRP is a meaning to determine the number of parts, components, and material needed for production. MRP is a production planning, scheduling, and inventory control system used to manage manufacturing process. So coming to the next topic, the DRP, the distribution resource planning, is a business administration for planning orders with a supply chain. The process also commonly refers to a distribution requirement planning. In other words, it's also used to certain inventory control parameters like safety stock and calculating the time phase inventory requirement. The DRP is a method used in business administration for planning orders with a supply chain. DRP enables users to set certain inventory control parameters, calculate the time phase inventory. Process is also commonly referred as distribution requirement planning. Basically, they set a minimum stock level so that the inventory doesn't goes down to zero, so they can keep on topping. Some companies have a concept of auto placing of order. When the stock inventory comes, it's a computer generated system. The procurement department gets an alert, they see the stock level and just they update it. So distribution requirement planning system used for in a systematic process to make a delivery of goods more efficient and deliver which goods in what quantities and at what location required to meet anticipated demand. The goal is to minimize shortages and reduce the cost of ordering, transportation and holding of goods. A typical example it is shown here, it's a factory, it has a central warehouse system, it has a distribution center where it takes all the data from the requirements and works out for the based on the retailer, the stock inventory level, auto orders have been placed, then the same and ERP concepts certainly works into this concept. So you should have a distribution plan and a whole composition plan. You should know the production data, the sales data, the cost of distribution, and the restrictions what do you had. This is a particular what we call it also as a DRP module. Let us understand the just-in-time. Inventory system is a management of aligning the raw materials out orders from suppliers directly from the production schedules. Companies employ this inventory strategy to increase efficiency and decrease waste by receiving goods. This method also requires producers to forecast demand accurately, because it shouldn't happen that a company makes up a demand and they pile up the raw material a lot. A lot of huge funds will be blocked, I can say. So by having just in time, depending on the time, like weekly, fortnightly, or a monthly requirement, production can be, the requirement can be planned so that it reaches well in time. Because if you don't follow the JIT, you may run short, and because of that, the entire production cycle might stop. Take an example of an automotive industry. Everything is ready, you have a shortage of paint. The vehicle cannot be delivered. That is how the concepts. So the certain key takeaways are: the inventory system in a management strategy that minimizes inventory and increases the efficiency. That's a very valid point. The just-in-time manufacture, known as one example, the Toyota, when it started in late 70s, it was one of the workable example. The success of JIT production process rely on steady production, high quality workmanship, no machine breakdowns, and reliable suppliers, so that they supply well in time. Employees, core employees are there, certain sometimes it may affect the production of a company. Coming to the next, the just inventory, JIT inventory system, the advantages, it talks about the few advantages, like production runs are short, which means the manufacturer can quickly move one product to another. Forthcoming, this method reduces cost of minimum warehouse needs, so it should not get piled up. Warehouses are used for a temporary location, just for stacking and distribution system. You cannot keep it months together. That's how companies also spend less on raw materials, because they just enough resource, because huge funds cannot be liquidized in terms of only procurement and piling up. So the flow should be there. The production, the procurement also should be there, and the production should be there, and the sales and marketing also should happen. And few disadvantages also are there. You can see on to the slide. So coming to the inbound logistic and purchasing. Inbound logistic refers to the transportation, the shortage and receiving of goods into business procured for the office use or the production unit or a manufacturing company. Basically, the inbound is nothing but procurement. Procurement, in the sense, any company wants a raw material. From the raw material only, we'll come to know that you can have a finished goods. So the inbound logistic, refers to basically a transportation, a storage and receiving of goods for a business purpose. So other definitions also are there. Various authors have given in a different, but the concept remains same. An outline above, inbound logistic focuses on transportation, storage, incoming goods. Important to understand who is liable to take the financial burden in these transportation contracts, where there is a voyage between a seller and a buyer. The inbound logistic example, it receives inventory into a warehouse directly from the manufacturer. It has to delivered by a truck, unloaded, counted, stored, and tracked in a warehouse management system, that we call it as WMS. So the concept of the JIT, there are a lot of data which are available. You can even see onto the various authors are given in a different concept. It depends upon company to company, the JIT concept, whether it will work for them. Sometimes you should be very important for a perishable goods, a pharma industry and all. This works at a lot. The concept of JIT is eliminating the waste, pull versus pull system, what we call it as the inflow and the outflow, the manufacturing cycle time, And the just in time, a typical example in an automotive company, that's one of the always example given by the various management concepts is of a Toyota company. That's a very successful one. So definition, inbound logistic is the receiving of raw materials or product from a supplier to a warehouse. This is the basic definition of inbound. Outbound logistic are the actions required for the final goods for the delivery. Inbound logistic, which comes inside the company for the purpose of manufacturing. It's also called as procurement. We call it as raw material, anything. Inbound logistic connotes the activity which are related to sourcing, acquiring, storing, delivery, raw material, parts, parcels, operations, firms involved into manufacturing business and all. Those all things are to be catered. So a procurement plays a very important role here on the strategic process of service sourcing, example, researching, negotiation, planning, whilst the purchase. There are a lot of process involved in this. If you see the sourcing and the processing concept, it shouldn't happen that you are purchasing a product at a very higher price, particularly in raw material. What do they do? The procurement department of a finance, what do they do is they come out with tendering. They float the tenders. They go up into the market. They do negotiation. They find out who is the least person, and they find out they should meet the all the requirements which are required as per the purchase order, what they want to purchase, the order or the invoice. So basically, the purchase department plays a very important role here in a logistic supply chain management. It's a self-explanatory. So coming to the warehouse, yes, a warehouse is a place or a storage or accumulation of goods. That's the best example. It may be defined as an establishing the assuming responsibilities. It is safe enough, safe custody of your goods. Warehouses enable business to carry out production throughout the year and selling their products whenever there is an adequate demand. They can stack it. They can keep it stock as a reserve, particularly in festive seasons. Nowadays, we are seeing this Amazon, this all things are happening here in a distribution, how the advertisement is being done. They all know that. So once you have seen that the item is not available, it will show in your app, stock out, sold out, not able to deliver. There are various reasons. So the role of the warehouse management plays a strategic role in supply chain management, enable inventory distribution, sorting of cross-docking process. Cross-docking is nothing but loading offloading process is known as docking. To strive they meet the growth of the growing demand of the market, so that they should fulfill the market requirement. It should not happen that the retail outlets are not having stock out. So as to maintain that one, they maintain the various stock levels at the various warehouse, and we also call it as godowns and all. So purpose of a warehouse and how does it operate is the simplest form of warehouse is a storage of goods until they needed. So when the need is there, then only it will be shipped. A typical pictures that has been shown how the things have been manufactured and stored. When the requirement comes, supply chain action comes into action, transportation will be done. Warehouse management system has tracking the records. They take the barcodes, they update the system. So the top from bottom to the top management, people will come to know how the things are going on and what's the business going on. It's a better, they follow a concept known as what we call it as the ERP. Might be a database of an Oracle or the various platforms are there. So coming to the type of warehouse, there are private warehouse. Private warehouse are those which have been exclusively meant for their private use. Public warehouse where it could be led on rent. Governmental warehouse like Food Corporation of India, the central storage of grains and all they do. The various reasons they maintain this governmental warehouse which have been totally managed, planned, organized, everything will be done by the governments. Cooperative warehouses are with this, yeah, this all this farming industry and all, they have the cooperative societies. So they work for a certain concept. The cooperative society, they are called as cooperative warehouses. Bonded warehouse are those which are to be very cautious. Particularly, it has been used in import and export business where the clearance of a custom officials are required. So we call it as a bonded warehouse. Until unless the clearance is not given, particularly in import export, this type of warehousing system works. So distribution center or the warehouse. So you might be having in a centralized warehouse also for one Karnataka, one at Bangalore. Then you might be having the various warehouses at the various locations like in northern part of Karnataka, southern part, the eastern part, and then the coastal area, depending. So the cold storage, there are certain goods which have been handled by the flights also. We call it as perishable goods, dairy products, frozen food, pharmaceuticals. They required certain temperature control. They have deep freezers and they have temperature controlled rooms, usually which are they get spoiled, like ice cream industry, that also pharmaceutical, they required cold storage, poultry items, they required cold storages, and meat, fish, and all these all things are required for the those are called as cold storage. Export and import, which are been totally slightly, you can say, not a general like a warehouse, because there are governmental agencies monitoring, because there are a lot of illegal activities also happening. Suppose you take for an air cargo, it is more strict because smuggling activity can happen, drug trafficking can happen, which causes huge losses to the industry or the government of India. So there are certain procedures for the import and export to warehouses. Climate control for the flowers and the fresh vegetables, it can be taken. Field warehouse, this is the remote fields where they have the most of the industry they try to use. We call it as outskirts of the city, they keep it, and later on they have a distribution. They work on the field, like even on the seaports. These are called coming under that. So agriculture warehouse terminology is sufficient enough for potato storage of grains, because seasonal foods have been grown in India. The requirement might be existing in a near future when there is a off season. So such type of items have been taken into consideration. So in the types of warehouse, there are certain explanations. Few slides I have shared it for your information. The standalone WMS system, you have supply chain model, you have integrated with ERP. So basically, warehouses is basically a physical structure, but this is all the warehouse management system as one they operate. Second one is the supply chain module. This is only a distribution from the main comes to Bangalore central area or a seaport. From there it starts distributing. So that is, comes under the supply chain module. Integrated with ERP is totally monitored with the help of a computer-based system, the flow based on the instructions of the demands and the orders which have been placed. That has been done. This typical example, it has been shown in a picture here. The types of warehouse, a slight explanation I have given you, which I have spoken to you about the private bonded labor, the smart warehouse, the corporation, consolidated, cooperative, government warehouse. These are the types, the distribution centers. They all require storage facility. We call it as a warehouse.